Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today we got a very special YouTube live event going on here. At least I hope so. Says it's live. I'm hoping you can hear me. It's all a mystery, the technology and the way the world works. But normally, of course, here on my YouTube channel, I do a lot of videos where I'm collecting and reading old comics and talking about buying old comics. Hey, Emmanuel, good to see you. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. I thought I was going to be talking to myself here for a while. That's usually what happens on these live streams. But I was just saying that usually here on my YouTube channel, I'm talking about collecting old comics, but I also like to make my own comics. And today I'm really excited that the third issue of the Crimebusters is live on Kickstarter. So I'm doing a live Kickstarter event. Hi, Kyle. Thanks for coming. I appreciate your support. I appreciate everyone's support. It's always good to see familiar names show up. And it's one thing I've really been gratified with so far. Obviously, the campaign's only been live since this morning, but I've been getting a lot of return backers, and I recognize most of the names of the people that have been backing the Kickstarter so far, and it's really exciting. So if anyone has any questions, please just feel free to ask questions. I'm going to fill some time here. I'm going to show off the Kickstarter page. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I've also got I want to talk about my cover artists. I've got a couple guest cover artists that did some of the variant covers, so I want to sort of highlight some of their stuff. I've got like some of the previous issues. I'll show those so people have an understanding of what exactly it is I'm doing here, and I'll talk some about just the process of making this. But if anyone has any questions or any comments, I'm happy to talk about anything. It doesn't have to just necessarily be the Crimebusters number 3. We're here to celebrate and have a good time. Just like, I don't know if anyone remembers that classic episode of Chips where Ponch and John go to the honky tonk after solving a case and they all sing "Celebrate Good Times." Obviously, that had a major impact on me as a 6-year-old because I still remember it. So just like Ponch and John, we're going to celebrate the good times. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and figure out here how to share my screen. There's a button that says share screen. So let's see what happens if I do that. We're going to share the screen. Share the screen, and now we got an infinity cover going on, but let's change that here. So here is the Kickstarter. As you can see right now, we currently are at $329 pledged out of 800. I want to do like a sort of Jerry Lewis telethon and have that number up on screen, and have do a Zoom background where behind me there's a bunch of people on phones, like celebrities getting the calls, but I don't have that technology. So here it is live, and really excited. If you haven't seen the page, it's very long. Some Kickstarters are very brief. They don't really give you a lot of information. I've gone the other direction. I've given you so much information that you'll probably get overload. But we've got all this stuff here: the regular cover, the variant cover, and the premium variants. I'll show off those in a minute. And then I've got a listing of what all the rewards are, because Kickstarter can be a little bit tricky. Like over here where they show your pledges, they don't actually have images, so you kind of have to cross-reference what it is you're trying to get. So I've got a listing here so you can see exactly what all of those would get you. Here's the fan club membership kit. Comes with a bunch of cool stuff. And then I've also got down here, there's 3-page previews for issue 1, issue 2, and issue 3, so you can get a little taste of all of them. I'm actually going to be adding a link, which I haven't done yet. Anyone who wants to read the first issue for free, I'm going to be having a link so you can get the PDF. And we're back to me here. I'm going to have a link that I'll add to the descriptor below, where you can download the PDF of the first issue for free. So if you want to read that, as a tease. I think issue 2 is the best, and hoping people like the 3rd issue. But issue 1, of course, sets the groundwork for everything, and it was my first comic that I made, so obviously, when I look at it now, I'm like, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. But I think it's a good comic. I think it's a good read. So we'll be adding that. Magical Lasso, hello, thanks for coming, and hello to Brookie Monster. That's my wife. Hello, hello. Again, if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to ask those. So I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the process here. Let me do the screen sharing again. If the screen sharing didn't work last time, just let me know, because I don't really know what I'm doing here. But here's the screen share, and we're going to go to this. This is where I do all the drawing. It's Clip Studio Paint. I've got an easel and I do everything on, and I'm just going to show the covers here. So issue 3, the Crimebusters. This has been really hard work. I started working on this back at the end of February. I'm still not quite done. I'll be finishing it right around the time I get the money from Kickstarter, which is about a little over a month from now. I should have it done right about then. And here in the 3rd issue, comic is it's like a Scooby-Doo sort of mystery, but there's may or may not actually be some supernatural elements in it as well. And in this issue, we've got some more of that going on. It's actually a Cold War story. The series is set in the 50s. This takes place in November 1956, just before Thanksgiving. So it actually takes place almost exactly to the day in 1956. And there's some mysterious goings on around campus. And so there's basically a Red Scare where people are like, oh, the attacks are being caused by communist agents. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually black magic. And so that's what the story is about this time. It's called The Spell of the Sorcerer. Also, this issue, I've been trying some new things. I have been trying to expand the Crimebusters universe a little bit, stretch the storytelling, what I'm doing. And so we've got some new characters coming in to sort of broaden. And the big one, I did a whole video on Granny Gumshoe. This is the Kickstarter exclusive variant cover. This is Granny Gumshoe. She is a Golden Age character, originally appeared in National Comics numbers 57 to 71 in the late 1940s. And I've completely revamped her with sort of a like a steampunk feel. She's sort of like a chaotic neutral version of Mary Poppins. She's like Mary Poppins, but with like sort of a really dark side and sense of humor. So she's I love Granny Gumshoe. I was really excited to finally bring her into the series. I've been planning to bring her in ever since I started with issue 1, but I knew I needed to sort of wait to get to the right point before she comes in. And so she's a major part of this story here. She's not the only Golden Age character that's coming in. The other characters coming in are they have more cameos, a smaller appearance, but we'll be seeing more of them. This is the back cover of the issue. And we see here in the middle, it's John Force, Magic Agent. Magic Agent first appeared actually in the early 60s from ACG, but prior to 1964, you had to renew your copyright every year in order to keep the copyright, and they didn't renew some of the copyrights for his original appearances. So he is in the public domain. And then over next to him is Star Flag, Undercover Agent. Again, she's a spy in some comics from, forget the publisher, but in the late 40s, early mid 50s. You can see here, you can probably tell that I have redesigned them and patterned them after Arthur Miller and Marilyn Monroe, since it's set in the mid 50s, set in 1956, which I think is the year they got married. It just seemed, based on their appearance, like it was just a perfect fit. I really wanted to capture the feel of that time period. I've also got the other variant covers. Every issue I do series of variant covers. I'm going to talk about this one more in particular, but I do a series of variant covers that are designed to look like Nancy Drew novels, and sort of playing an homage to the Girl Detectives like Nancy Drew and Veronica Mars and Trixie Belden, and so they all feature Trixie Trouble, my co-lead, and this is a guest artist, Julie Oliviera. With these, what I'm trying to do after I did the first issue cover myself, but every issue after this, I'm trying to have an independent female comic creator do the variant covers for this series. I don't have much of a platform, but I have a very small platform. I want to try and give exposure when I can to other people. So. And then finally, we've got this issue's Boy Comics variant. I'll go into this a little bit more too, but Boy Comics is a series that my co-lead Chuck Chandler first appeared in. And so I'm picking up the continuity from where that ended with issue 119. And so here with issue 3, we've got issue 122 to just sort of keep the legacy on here. And when he first debuted, it was during World War II, and his arch nemesis was Iron Jaw. So my guest artist, Mark Svensson, is a huge fan of Crimebuster and of Lev Gleason comics. And so he wanted to do an homage to Iron Jaw. I had seen an earlier version of this, and I asked if he would mind doing it for me, and he was happy to do it. So I'm really excited to get these, and I'll show off all the other ones as well. So let me come back out of this screen sharing. Let's see. Hey, MRP, good to see you. And we got a question from Kyle. Is Super Avery going to make a cameo in this issue? No, Super Avery isn't going to be in the comic itself, probably. I have to talk to Avery about this. There is a story that I have coming up that might have space for Super Avery to actually be in the story. That won't be until she's 7 though, and the rate I'm going, we're talking 2 or 3 years. So I haven't talked to Avery about that to see if he wants to be in it. I do. Let me show off the Super Avery cover for those people who maybe don't know what Kyle's referring to. Here's the variant cover for issue 2. It's Super Avery, and that Super Avery is the character in the middle between Chuck and Trixie, and he's a superhero. And Avery Hool, here's his name. He does a comic called Super Avery that he makes, and he's on the autism spectrum, and he just loves comics, and he just makes comics. He's made more than I have. He's done a bunch of them, and he's got a series of YouTube videos. I can include the link when this is over. I'll add it to below. So if you want to see the YouTube videos where they go page by page through the issues of Super Avery, we did this for issue 2. I really wanted to show his work because I think he's just really cool. And I do have a few copies left. So right now on the Kickstarter, the only way to get them on the current Kickstarter is if you get the Colossal Bundle, which is the highest price thing. It's got a copy of every variant, save one that I've done so far, so you can get all the different versions. It's got a bunch of other stuff. Since I only had a couple copies of Super Avery left, right now I'm doing them there. If no one ends up getting those, then towards the end of the campaign, I'll probably release those as an add-on. So if you want to just get them individually, but I do have like maybe 5 copies left. Otherwise, they've sold out. So my wife wants to know if, so on the Boy Comics variant, let me pull it back up so we can see what she's talking about. She's digging Squeaks' expression. If he had a thought bubble, what would it say? Let's go back to here. Yeah, so Chuck's up here in the fight of his life with Iron Jaw. And meanwhile, Squeaks is just here sipping a cappuccino. It's a good question. When I talked to Mark about the cover, we talked about having Squeaks on it because one thing Squeaks does and did at the time in particular was when you have this Iron Jaw, this terrible villain, Squeaks always added a comedic element to sort of take the edge off. So I knew Squeaks was going to be on the cover. I didn't know what he was going to be doing. And so it was a pleasant surprise when I saw this. I don't know. I'll have to ask Mark what he thinks. Since this cover is his baby, I feel like Mark should really be the one to figure out what Squeaks would be thinking here. It would also depend, of course, on which version of Squeaks it is. Just super nerdy trivia, but Squeaks had his own title for just a few issues in the 50s. But when he was in his title, it was a talking animal, sort of Tom and Jerry thing where all the animals could talk. Whereas regularly in the normal comics, he can't talk. So I did a play on that sort of in the first issue where I did the Squeaks backup, where you're not really sure necessarily whether he's having these adventures or if he's just sort of daydreaming them. But yeah, you know, I'll ask Mark and see what he thinks Squeaks might be thinking there. Les, thanks very much for joining. I appreciate it. How can you write to me? If you go to the my channel, so if you go to the Classic Comic Collector channel and you go to the about, there's a section it's about the channel. It should have there. I added my email address. So if you just copy that email address and just paste it into whatever you use for your email, you can email me directly, and I'd love to hear from you. I'm obviously, as you can tell from my videos, I love Archie and romance comics. I really want to do a romance comic. Obviously I'm focused on Crimebusters. That has to come first, but I have some story ideas for doing just a single issue classic old school romance comic. And I'm hoping next year that I might be able to get some artists working with me. I don't have the time to draw anything myself other than Crimebusters, but if I can get some other artists working with me, then I think maybe next year or possibly the year after, I'm going to be putting out an issue, just a single romance comic, because I just love it so much, and I want to make them. I already read them and collect them and buy them, but I want to make them as well. So maybe next time I do a Kickstarter, it will be for a new issue of a romance comic as opposed to Crimebusters, but that's still in the future. So I guess I'll just show. I brought some comics here with me. I mentioned, of course, Granny Gumshoe, who I love so much. I did a whole video on Granny Gumshoe. She first appeared in this comic with this hideous cover, because for some reason National Comics decided that the Carnival Barker should be the main character in the series and is on all the covers. But hidden in this is the first appearance of Granny Gumshoe. So if you're interested in learning more about Granny Gumshoe, like I said, I did a whole video a couple weeks ago where I went through her story in here and I broke down exactly what the process was of taking this classic character and reimagining her for both for sort of a modern audience, but also just for the purposes of my stories. So if you're interested in that, I also just wanted to show, as I mentioned, I have a complete run of Boy Comics. Chuck Chandler in Boy Comics first debuted. The first issue came out in 1942. The series lasted for 117 issues over 14 years. As you can see, it actually lasted into the Comics Code era. And this is the final issue, number 119. And at the end of the series, he stops being like a costumed crime fighter in New York City, and he goes off to a little college to get his degree so he can actually join the FBI. And I just wanted to show this to show where my variant covers are coming from. So every issue I do an homage cover where I'm continuing the Boy Comics numbering and legacy. So here's the second print variant for Boy Comics number 120. So this is the first issue of Crimebusters, but with the Boy Comics logo and numbering that I carried over from here, issue 119. And then the second issue of Crimebusters is Boy Comics 121. And these are both homages. So this one here is an homage to Boy Comics number 10. It has a cover by Charles Biro. That's probably the most famous of his covers. And then this is an homage to Adventure Comics 74, because it also features another Boy Comics character from the 40s named Yankee Long Ago, who has this thing where he can go time travel in his dreams. And since he's in this issue, I wanted to do like a Sandman sort of homage. So those are the two covers that go with the one I had been showing, the 122 by Mark Svensson with Squeaks, and where he's fighting Iron Jaw. The other variant covers that I mentioned, here's the second print variant for the Trixie's Mysteries Book 1. And then for issue 2, I had artist Heather Farrington was nice enough to do this cover for me. for issue 2. I do still have a few of these left, so these are all available. And for some people really like, you know, just these covers. They don't want the regular covers. Other people collect the Boy Comics covers because they're like classic comic book fans. So what I've done on the let me share screen again so you can see what I'm talking about. What I've done on the Kickstarter is that you can, as rewards, you can get a full set of the variants. So it's $33 plus shipping for a full set of the variants. And then down here is just the explanation of that. So yeah, for the $33 level, you'll get a set of all 3 issues, the Trixie ones or the Boy Comics. You can pick either of them. If you only want one or another, the Kickstarter is really cool. They just started doing this thing where they've added the add-ons are actually in Kickstarter now. So when you do a pledge, it brings you to the second screen with the add-ons, and that will allow you to sorry, my phone's blowing up. Everyone must just be hearing about this live feed and everything, and it just phone's blowing up. So anyway, yeah, now you can sort of pick and choose. It's like a la carte. You can just sort of sign up, you pick one issue, and then if you just want to mix and match, you can do them on the add-ons. It's so much easier. It's allowed me to streamline the formatting a lot. So yeah, I'm just really excited with this one. This one's been a lot of work, and some of that's because I've been facing a lot of health issues, as I've talked about on my channel this year. Of course, there's all the pandemic stuff, all the stress and everything going on as well. It's just really slowed down my process. I was hoping to do it in 6 months, but it's taken a lot longer. But also the story was really challenging. There were elements that I had to change because some of the stuff I was doing ended up being a little too close to certain events that were taking place in the world. Like when I started writing it, those things hadn't happened, but then there was just too many parallels, you know, and it's good to have, you know, it's a story that's set in the Cold War, so there's going to be obvious parallels with some of the things happening now, and that's good, I think, because I've mentioned before in a video, I did a whole video about the process of making comics, and in that, you know, I talked about your stories have to be about something or else they're not really stories. So this one, you know, the overtones and the metaphors with the Cold War, you know, having meaning today is, you know, it's intentional. It's an important part of the story, but it got a little too real, and I had to just rework a lot of the structure. I had to take an entire character and that character's storyline out of the issue and rewrite it. So it's just been really hard to do. And I'm so in the weeds now that, you know, I read it and I've read it so many times that I'm just like, oh, I hope it's good. But I have had a couple people read it, my first readers, and they liked it. So I'm optimistic that people will like it. So MRP has a question here. Is there a backup story in issue number 3? And if so, who will be featured? You know what? I can show you that there is a backup story, and it is, let me just see if I can find this here. I'm just going to pull this up for a share screen. So it's a 6-page backup story. Every story has been getting longer. So the first issue, in the first issue, the story was 30 pages, and there was a 4-page backup story. In the second issue, the story was 31 pages, and there was a 5-page backup story. And this time around, you guessed it, the main story is 32 pages, and there's a 6-page backup story. But I'll give you just a quick tease of what it is. Probably a little bit of a surprise for people who've been reading the series, but the backup story is actually featuring Officer Joe. So Officer Joe has appeared in the first 2 issues. He's someone that he's sort of the kindly police officer who has helped Chuck and Trixie on some of their missions. And here, as you can see, he runs into John Force in Agent Starflag, and they've got some questions for him. So I don't want to spoil too much, so I'm going to get rid of that. But that's basically, we're going to learn in this issue some of the backstory of Officer Joe, and we're also going to get a look and see that maybe there's a little bit more going on with Officer Joe, and you know, he's been helping them a little bit and sort of covering for them because the police chief doesn't like them. We're going to find out a little bit more in this issue why he's doing that. There might be a little bit more to it than him just being a nice guy. So I don't want to give anything else away. But that's to answer your question, MRP. Yes, there is. Every issue is going to have a backup story, at least the first 9. I think issue 10, when I get to that point, which is going to be a few years, is going to be kind of a big one, and issue 10 might not have a backup story because everything that's happened in the first 9 issues is going to sort of come together in issue 10, and there may not be space or need for backup, but every issue is going to have a backup. Next issue 4, the backup story is going to be with Stu, and we're going to see what's been happening with Stu since issue 1 and what he's doing back home now that he's left school to deal with what happened in issue 1. So I've got everything planned out, both for the main and the backup stories up through issue 10 for the backup stories. The main stories I've planned in pretty good detail up through issue 15. So there's a master plan, but for those who haven't read the series, you know, each individual issue is a self-contained story, so you don't need to have read all of them. It's not, you know, it's not too deep at this point on any kind of like you know, deep continuity that you have to know. I'll fill you in on any details you need, but yeah, there's a bit of a storyline going on. So let me see, we're still at 329. I just wanted to check in case I needed to change the non-existent number on screen that was counting the money, but you know, last time, right now I've got 23 backers. I'm really happy with that. Actually, the money amount's not that as important to me. Obviously, I don't want to pay for it or else it won't fund. But more important to me is reaching more people and getting more people to read it. This time around, so far it's very early, but I've had more people getting the PDFs as opposed to the physical issues, which is totally fine. It's however people like to read or collect comics is great. It does mean that my money amount is lower because those are obviously cheaper to produce, so they cost less. But last time I had 83 backers, and I'm really hoping to reach 100 this time, bring in some more people to read the series. So we'll see what happens. The Kickstarter campaign is running until 9:00 p.m. on Friday, December 4. So people have another 17 days and 1.5 hours to you know, take a look at it and decide if they want to back it or not. Hey Darka, thanks very much. I appreciate the congratulations, and thanks very much for joining me here and joining all of us here in this celebration. I'm assuming that everyone, I can't see you, you can see me, I can't see you, but I'm assuming that everyone right now, they've probably got the disco balls going, they've got the Mardi Gras beads. I assume you're dancing around your living room, waving your copies of Crimebusters in the air in excitement. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the enthusiasm from everybody. I did want to actually go back to the Trixie's Mysteries variant covers because I showed briefly, but I want to go into a little more detail. So I've got the issue 1. This is the second print variant because I sold out of issue 2, and then of the first print. Here is the issue 2 cover of the Trixie's Mysteries by Heather Farrington. Let me go back to the screen share because I want to talk about the new one. Here is the share screen. So this is by Julie Oliviera, and I'm really excited that Julie agreed to do this cover because her art's really cool. That's the most important part. But also, she has a comic that has been successful on Kickstarter called Camp Bitter Lake. Let me bring that up here. So here is the look at her cover. Let me scroll down so you can see there's like a big monster with a house on its head. And then we got the characters.
And as you can see, the case of the stolen stuff that she drew with her creative partner Jim Gibbons, is very much in the same, sort of spirit as Crimebusters. So obviously her characters in Camp Bitter Lake are younger than the characters in Crimebusters because my character's in college and these are much younger kids, but it has that same tradition of sort of the amateur, kid detectives doing the spooky missions. So I just really love the opportunity to collaborate with Julie because we're really working from the same place of love for this genre. This here is, you can buy the comic on Gumroad. She also has a website which is julieoliviera.com, and it's got a bunch of stuff here about Camp Bitter Lake and about some of the other comics that she's done. And so you can check out her stuff. You can buy some of her comics and prints and look at some of the other stuff that she's been working on. But I'm just really excited to have her on board here. So yeah, please. And she's got stuff, it's 2020, so she's got an Instagram account where she posts a lot of really cool artwork you can check out. So just I just recommend everybody does that. Also, I'm going to be let me pull this back off here. Julie's going to be joining me at some point during the campaign here. I'm going to be talking to her, and I'll be posting that as a video, both on YouTube, but also I'll add it as like an update on the Kickstarter itself. So we're going to be talking about the Crimebusters and her cover, but we'll also be talking about Camp Bitter Lake and just her sort of experience as a comic creator and how she got into comics and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to talk to her about that. One other thing along those lines I wanted to mention is sometime this weekend, I think, or next week, I forget, but sometime in the next week or so, I'm also going to be appearing on a YouTube channel, a podcast, and I don't have the details here called up immediately. Let me see if I can find them. But the guy who does the channel talks to independent comic creators and interviews them about their projects and about making comics and all this stuff. And yeah, it's Barney Smith. So if you haven't looked at Barney's YouTube channel, it's called his website's called storycomic.com. He has a YouTube channel where he posts these videos. Check that out. He's talked to all sorts of other cool indie creators already, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. And of course, here on my YouTube channel, when I get to that point, I'll talk about it. I'll post a link so you can follow it. Also, I think there's a way I can add it to my main channel as like a recommended video, so it'll bring you right there to watch that, and I'll post it as an update so you can. If you haven't gotten enough of me just talking about myself, which would be boggling because I do it all the time here at incredible length on my YouTube channel. But anyway, if you want to see me talk more about that, I'll be joining Barney sometime in the next couple of weeks, and I'll give you the details for that. So yeah, I'm kind of. Right, so Kyle's asking, is my wife a recurring background character in my comics? And the answer is no, but I will say that there is a new character appearing in issue 3 who is a family member, and I don't want to say anything else other than that, other than the fact that when I did issue 2 for the Kickstarter, I had a reward available where you could, besides getting a bunch of different cool stuff like a hand-drawn sketch cover and stuff like that, but I said I would draw you into issue 3 as a character. And so I've done that. And so one of my family members chose that reward, and so they're in issue 3. And it was originally meant to just be sort of a cameo, but actually they turned out to be sort of a more important character that we'll be seeing in future issues. So I did not offer that reward up again because if it wasn't a family member, there would start to be some legal issues around using their likeness. But So the answer is no, but there will be a new recurring character showing up who is based on one of my family members. So yeah, let me just check the tally, and here we are, and we are at $329. Yeah, still the same. That's totally cool. I would imagine it'd be funny if, like, on the telethon, if Jerry Lewis, because they have the running tell, if it just stayed the same for the entire broadcast. But I'm just really thankful and grateful to everybody who has supported me, not just now, but in the past. Like, when I started working on this, I didn't know if anybody was going to read it or if anybody was going to like it. And it's a ton of work. So, at the beginning, it was basically entirely for my own benefit. But now that people are reading it and liking it, I want to make sure that I'm doing stuff that they like, and that they enjoy, and that you like and you enjoy. So I just want to thank everybody. The fact that I already have 23 backers in just a matter of a few hours is fantastic. And like I said earlier, it's really great that I recognize most of the names. Most of them are people that are returning, and that tells me, it's just really gratifying that they liked the previous issue enough to come back for another one. So thanks to everyone that's doing that. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I said the same thing right at the beginning, that I should have done like a Zoom background at least, or something with the phone banks. But yeah, I do have a number of stuffed animals. I don't know, I've got a dinosaur there. All I've got is my cell phone. It's not quite the same thing. As you can see, I've got the cover of Crimebusters #2 as my screensaver. That was a digital award that I did for last issue, and I haven't announced any of the stretch goals. I do have some in mind, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't want to be presumptuous. And sometimes on Kickstarter, people, they launch and they're like, here's my stretch goal for when I hit $30 million. And I'm like, well, why don't I see if I can just actually get to my regular goal and not just presume that everyone's going to be throwing money at me. But if we do hit the $800 goal before the end of the campaign, I'll announce some stretch goals. The first one will probably be trading cards. One of the add-ons that you can get right now, if you miss the first 2 issues, as stretch goals for the first 2 issues, I've been doing a series of trading cards. So for issue 1, it was a Crimebusters trading card. It was a group shot. And then for issue 2, we did individual trading cards for Chuck and Trixie. And so this time around, if we get to the point where we've hit the goal, my stretch goal is going to be, the first one's going to be trading cards for the other 2 members of the Crimebusters. Well, 3. One of them will be a Vera card, Vera Veritas, Science Adventurer. And then the other card will be Stu and Squeaks together. So that's my plan. I know I've mentioned this before, but some of you weren't around then. So here's the card. This might be a better choice. So here's the card. You can see down here it says set number 6. Right. The reason for that is that I patterned that after this here. This one, you can just barely see up in the top corner. It says set number 2. But these cards here was a set of trading cards that Lev Gleason put out in 1951 with all of the characters at the time. This is the Crimebuster and Squeaks card. Squeaks actually had his own card as well, because I guess he was more popular than Chuck. So when I was doing these, I intentionally patterned them after those so that they would match the originals. That's why it says set number 6 on it, because the original cards, there were 5 sets of 3 each. So I'm looking at these as a continuation of the trading cards from 1951. Let's see, Kyle. I would sign over my likeness rights to be a background character dipping in and out of the shadows, being a potential Scooby villain of the future. Well, we could talk about that, Kyle. I have some villains coming up. A couple of them I don't think you would quite fit, but there's always space for more creepy villains in my in my comic. So see, Dorka's asking me, side question, when things aren't as busy on my end, would I be interested in doing an interview about my comics and creative journey? Yeah, absolutely. I love doing that. As people that have watched my YouTube channel know, there's nothing I like more than just talking about myself. Not everyone watching my videos always loves the fact that they constantly are clocking in an hour or hour and a half long as opposed to like 4 minutes, which I guess is the usual. Hey, Charlie from Disney Nerd Herders, if anyone here happens to be a fan of Disney theme parks the way I am, please check out Disney Nerd Herders, one of the premier Disney theme park content creation sites on YouTube. With I don't know how many subscribers you have, Charlie. I'm sorry, but it's got to be. I know it's over 1,000. So like all sorts of cool Disney theme parks. I'm trying to figure out how to do it, but at some point in the Crimebusters series, I am planning on having an issue that's set at Disneyland. Of course, my comic currently is taking place in 1956, and Disneyland had just opened, and the Disneyland TV show was still on. So Disneyland was a big cultural thing that was happening. Plus, I love Disney theme parks, and I would love to draw just do a story where they're at Disneyland as it was in the 1956. It would probably be 57 or 58 before story-wise before I can get to them to California for that. But that's definitely something that I want to do. Let's see, MRP says Crimebusters 80s RPG supplement or venture module variant cover as stretch goals. I've thought about doing that. I'll just mention a friend and I have been just doing the very basic work on, eventually I want to create a Crimebusters board game. It's going to be sort of a cross between, it takes elements from Betrayal in the House on the Hill, which is a classic group of people investigating a haunted house, but I want to add some other elements that are going to be more kind of like an Arkham horror sort of experience. So we're just starting to work on that, but it's just, there's just not enough time in the world to do all this stuff. So that's probably going to be a couple more years at best before we get to that. But I have thought about doing a variant cover. I've seen some really cool ones that look like, like the D&D red box. I've seen some comic covers that are done to look like that. And so I've been thinking about that. So I'll keep that in mind, MRP. That might be something that I could do, particularly as a Kickstarter exclusive cover. It's hard to do some of those variants with the Boy comics and the Trixies, but with the Kickstarter exclusive, I've been doing all sorts of different things. It's actually a good jumping off point to show you the previous ones. So I have a Kickstarter exclusive variant cover that I do for each issue. So if the cost is the same as the regular cover. So it's not like you have to pay extra for it. I intentionally am making it the same price as the regular cover so that people can just decide whichever one they want. What it has on it, though, is it has the original numbering. So it's the Crimebusters logo, but instead of saying number 1, this is number 120 because it's carrying on the numbering from Boy Comics 119. With the Kickstarter exclusive, again, the covers are only available on Kickstarter. They're not available to anyone else. I don't sell them on my website. I don't sell them at conventions. You can only get them through Kickstarter. And once they're sold out, I'm not reprinting them. So there's no more copies. So 120 is completely sold out. I have a couple copies that I kept for myself. So at some point in the future, I might release 1 or 2 more of them. But right now, there's none available. For issue 2, I did the Vera Veritas Science Adventurer Kickstarter exclusive. This is an homage to the cover of Planet Comics number 71. And in the Vera backup story that is in this issue, she has a copy of Planet Comics 71 because she's a big science fiction fan, and this takes place in the 50s. So I just love the idea of her being a comics fan and reading the pulps and stuff. So this I still have a couple copies of. This is available as an add-on in the current campaign. I think there's only 5 copies left. So once people have selected those 5 copies, that one's going to be gone as well. So with the Kickstarter exclusive variants, I do have some stuff planned for future issues where the design's going to start getting away from this. We're going to start taking some chances of design. So that might be a perfect place to do an RPG module. Just got my wheels thinking about what issue that would make sense for. And we'll have to see. It might be a little while, but I think it's a good idea. Kyle says Granny Gumshoe versus the Claw. It's interesting. I have mixed feelings about the Claw. He's a great villain. Of course, he does have some yellow peril overtones that I would want to avoid, but on the other hand, he's explicitly an alien from another planet, and he is really cool. There's some other characters from Lev Gleason that I am planning on working into the book at some point. I'm trying to figure out a way to work in Bart Hill, the original Daredevil. I'm actually not a huge fan. I'm a bigger fan of the Little Wise Guys. So at some point we might be seeing the Little Wise Guys. I was originally going to have them in the first issue, in the backup story, but they didn't quite work out. But there's a couple other Lev Gleason characters that I might work in. Like I already had Yankee long ago last issue. But I'd love to get some of the other characters from Boy Comics in particular worked in. There's a character named Young Robin Hood. I really like Bombshell, Son of War, although figuring out how on earth he makes any sense in the Crimebusters world is going to be tricky. So, yeah. MRP, if you do the RPG cover, talk to me about prepping some kind of green stat blocks for Chuck and crew. Yeah, that would be great. I'll be happy to talk to you about that. It's funny you mentioned that. One of the rewards that I came very close to going with as an add-on last time, and I just didn't have the time to do it. And maybe I'll do it this time if I'm going to mention here, if people really want it, I could do it as an add-on. Is basically basically a template, a digital template you can print out at home and make your own, or I could make them here out of cardboard because they're easy enough. But basically for Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which I mentioned earlier, is a great board game where you are playing a group of people exploring a haunted house. I was going to make character cards for Chuck and Trixie and Vera and Stu so that you could use them as characters in Betrayal in the House. It's very simple. They have, those characters in Betrayal have certain stats, but only a handful of them, and they're very balanced. So it would just be a matter of getting them the right shape, gluing a piece of cardboard, and just putting the images on there. So I don't know. It's a very simple thing I was thinking about doing as a reward. I just haven't had a chance to do it anytime this year to just even make up the artwork. But people like that sort of thing. So yeah, if I do that cover, that's a great idea, MRP. I'll talk to you about it. It'll probably be a little while. I've got my covers kind of planned for issues 4 and 5, but who knows? We'll see. And it also depend a little bit on how the variant covers continue to do. They've been doing pretty well as rewards. They do very well at conventions, but right now I can't go to any conventions to sell them. Yeah, but it's a good idea. I think it could have a lot of crossover. So I was planning on going about an hour, which gives me 10 minutes left. Anybody have any more questions? Kyle says the new Wise Guys idea, characters of Avery, Metarog, me, and others as the team. I don't know, the adult Wise Guys starts to sound like it's like Ray Liotta. So I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. But yeah, we'll talk. I think there's always space and stuff. Charlie's asking, any guess on when conventions start back up? I mean, I have no idea. Honestly, I think it's going to depend on two things. It's going to depend on state regulations. All the conventions this year had to be canceled because the state wouldn't allow meetings that size. And for now, conventions are still too large. I know they had loosened up the regulations. Now they're tightening them back up. As long as there's any kind of restriction on how many people can gather in a place, there aren't going to be any comic book conventions. Here in Massachusetts, I know that there was a convention a couple months ago in New Hampshire, but I'm not comfortable attending them anyway. So honestly, my guess is it'll be after there's a vaccine, and I'm hoping that'll be by the summer. But I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. So that is my best hope, is that next summer conventions will start back up. It just starts to get tricky. I know for putting on a convention, they have to plan it so far in advance in terms of getting the hotels and the guests and setting everything up, that I don't know how much lead time they're going to need to create a convention, even after the restrictions have eased. But if I had to bet, I would say we might start seeing some again in Massachusetts in the fall of next year, but that's being hopeful. I don't know. I had several conventions lined up this year where I've already paid for the tables, and what happened with those is that they all got canceled. I rolled over my table fee to next year, and basically that means that I have a big outlay of costs this year that I haven't recouped. But hopefully when I'm able to go, I'll get the money back because I'm prepaid. But now at this point, I don't even know if those conventions are going to be able to take place next summer. So I don't know what they're going to do. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Let's see. Brookie Monster asks, did I ever hear back from Aresia about being a panelist? So the answer is no. I have never heard back from Aresia. Aresia is a science fiction convention here in Boston that my wife and I go to every year, and we love it. And every year I go to all these panels, and we go to all these panels, and I almost always come away thinking to myself, I wish I had been a panelist on that, because the topic was really interesting and they didn't quite talk about what I wanted to talk about. And I don't feel comfortable just jumping in from the audience because that can be really rude. And so I had contacted Aresia and been like, here's a bunch of things I'm interested in, I would like to be a panelist on. And I suggested specifically I really want to do a panel on romance comics and how the genre has changed, and how like now it's still very popular, but it's in Japan. So there's a lot of romance manga that are still very popular here in the US as well as in Japan, and just talk about how the romance comics have shifted. But no. I also, I said I could talk about Wonder Woman or really, anything about old comics. Happy to be on the panels, but I have not heard anything from anybody at Aresia. So far, that's a big no. Is Brookie Monster going to make a cameo on my channel? I'm going to guess the answer to that one's probably no. That's probably no. Let's see. MRP says some of the big cons for next year are already pushed back to December from their normal dates. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. The big one for me, so there's two big conventions for me as a small indie creator. And one of them is MICE. It's the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo here in Cambridge. And I haven't actually been able to get into that one, but I am part of the Boston Comics Roundtable, which is a group of like-minded comic creators here in Boston. And so last year I was manning their table for part of a day, so I was able to bring the Crimebusters, and that was really good. It's a great place to network and to just to see all these great independent comics. That was completely online this year. They usually hold it in October or September, but I think usually October. So at this point, I don't know if they're going to be ready to do that next year by the time that rolls around. And the other one is Small Press Expo in Baltimore, and that got axed. Now that's usually a little bit earlier in the year, a little bit. I think it's August, maybe, or maybe September, early September. And that's one that I really wanted to get into because that's sort of the big one in the country. There's another one in Toronto, but I haven't really looked into too much. And right now with the travel, there's no way to get there. So those are the conventions that I think I could do well at. Or some of the smaller conventions. I really was looking forward to Plastic City in Leominster. Well, it's technically in Fitchburg, but that got canceled. So I don't know. I don't think right now that I would do very well from my limited experience at the big conventions, because people going to big conventions usually just aren't looking for indie comics. Cosplay video. I'm going to refer all questions about my wife to my wife, and she may or may not answer them, but I am not going to make any promises about any content with my wife appearing on the channel. She has complete say over whether that ever happens. So don't get your fingers crossed. Let's see, MRP. You should look at Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, sponsored by Jeff Smith at The Ohio State University. Oh yeah, okay. I'll definitely take a look at that. And Kyle says, hopefully make an Indianapolis convention someday. Well, I am a Colts fan. It's a long story, but I'm a lifelong Colts fan. I've been a Colts fan since they were in Baltimore. I have been to Indianapolis specifically to go to a Colts game. And actually, the company I work for is headquartered in Indianapolis. So I've been there a couple times for work as well. So it's definitely reasonable that I might make it to Indianapolis at some point, because I have a lot of reasons to get out there besides just comics. So we'll see. That's possible. It's possible, Kyle. I might make it to Indianapolis at some point for a convention, or just might wander through, like Johnny Appleseed, walking the earth. All right. Yes, my wife mentioned here she has got a Trixie costume that unfortunately she hasn't had a chance to wear because I have a Chuck cosplay. So we have talked about going to some conventions as Chuck and Trixie, but that has just not had a chance to happen. Les asks, what is my favorite Archie or romance? And we got your email. Yeah, I'll drop you a line. My favorite Archie. Okay, so my favorite Archie series in general is Jughead, because Jughead's my favorite character. I love Jughead. I will say though that I'm a really big fan of the original Life with Archie series, which ran from 1958 to 1991, 286 issues. I don't have all of them, but I have most of them. I think I'm missing about 50. So I've got about 230, 240 issues of Life with Archie. It's a really big inspiration for the Crimebusters. I draw Crimebusters in Archie style. And part of that is from reading Life with Archie, realizing that you can use that Archie style in more serious adventure stories. It does work. And of course, Life with Archie did have a lot of sort of mystery adventure stuff. There was some like spooky supernatural, particularly once after the Scooby-Doo era. So once you get into the 70s and 80s, there is a lot of that in Life with Archie. So Life with Archie, but I love Jughead, particularly certain runs on Jughead. I'm a big fan of. As for romance, Young Love is traditionally my favorite romance title. I will say that I'm getting more and more into Charlton's. Just Married is probably my favorite Charlton title because I love the David and Eileen arc in issues 93 to 101. But I have a soft spot for Young Love, I would say. Caveats to both of those answers. Stuff from ACG is much harder to find than DC or Charlton, but I do have a smattering of issues of My Romantic Adventure and Confessions of the Lovelorn, and I really like the ACG stuff because it's very plot heavy, lots of twists and turns. The DC stuff can get very formulaic and samey, and it's very internal. It's a lot of like moping and worrying about why don't they love me, and they're kissing some other person. At ACG, it's sort of like they went on a cruise and the ship, crashed into a volcano, and they got attacked by sharks, and then they realize they're in love with each other. So there's like all this, lots of weird stuff and action and stuff and I enjoy those stories a little bit more. Let's see. Kyle says, next time I pass through, set aside some time for me to go through your library. I love it. That's a great idea. And yes, David and Eileen. I talk about David and Eileen all the time. I did a whole video about David and Eileen and Just Married 93 to 101 here. So feel free to look for that. He's Jewish. She's Irish, let's say. That's what they say on every issue. He's Jewish. She's Irish, because they don't want to say that she's Catholic, which is what the story is actually about. So she's Irish, I suppose. Yeah. So anyway. All right, so we just hit an hour exactly. So I think I'm going to wrap this up. Last questions. Anybody has anything? Feel like there's something I didn't say about Crimebusters, but I must have, considering how long I've been talking. One last check of the leaderboard, and we are at $329, 23 backers. Thank you to everyone who's been listening and joining me for this celebration. I love it, and I appreciate all your support. Whether you choose to back the series or not, it doesn't really matter. Any support, just being here, I really appreciate it. I mean, I've been working on this for so long that any support is appreciated. So I guess with that, I'll just wrap it up. I don't see any more questions. This video it's going to take YouTube a while to process it, but it will be available to rewatch. And when that happens, at that point, I'll add in some of the links that I mentioned. Thanks everyone for coming. Les, I'll send you an email in the next couple of days. We can talk about Archie and romance books. And yeah, I appreciate everyone coming and spending the time here with me tonight. And adventure awaits.